G'day guys, I'm Alex, the developer of Cinematic URP post-processing. Today we're going to be running through a demo scene and setting up some post-processing to see the new features and changes in CUPP's UI for version 4.5.1. So already you can see I've got a demo scene open here, and I've gone ahead and opened up my asset renderer and added in all of the renderer features that CUPP needs. So you might be wondering why these are called Prism. All of these renderer features that CUPP uses, they are based on Prism effects. And so that's how you know that they are related to CUPP. And you can just go ahead there and add them all in this order is the recommended order for adding all of CUPP's effects. So once you've got all of these in here, you shouldn't need to do anything else. Just add them all in and you're ready to roll. So next up, we're going to go ahead and create a global volume in the scene. And we're going to go and create a new volume profile. So first off, we want to go ahead and add the main Prism effects volume here. So let's go ahead and click Use Cinematic URP Post-Processing. And first up as well, we're going to use some color correction. So you can see here the color correction. Oh, and you know what? I've forgotten to do something. And if that happens to you, just remember to check your camera. Your main camera has post-processing checked. And there you go. We've checked post-processing and now CUPP is working its magic. So I think what we're going to go for is a very modern shop scene here. So let's go ahead and increase the temperature from warm to cool, make it a little bit cooler there. We probably don't need any color tint, but you can see what that does. Exposure comp, I think actually this scene to me, I've just baked it and it is looking a little bit bright. So what I'm going to do, because we are in HDR, so we can actually do this without losing data. And that's one of the really powerful things with CUPP's post-processing color correction pipeline is it's all high precision HDR. So you can you don't need to turn down your lights necessarily. You can just decrease the exposure compensation, and that's going to give you all of that data still in the scene. Next up, vibrance. I don't think we need it for this scene. In fact, sometimes it can look a little bit more realistic if that's what you're looking for by decreasing the vibrance. Now, contrast. I think contrast probably not needed for this scene either. And chromacity. This is another one that works in the LAB color space, and in effect, it ends up looking a little bit like vibrance. So now lightness, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to decrease, I'm going to play around with the lightness slope here to effectively decrease the scene's brightness. And I find as though this often helps a lot in removing the kind of flat look that Unity URP often gives to scenes like this with the default renderer. And what this also does is it kind of also acts as a separate form of contrast as well. You'll note that, down here, below the shelves, there's actually a little bit more contrast, and you can see that ambient occlusion a little bit better. Now, okay, shadows. This is an interesting one. So if I was doing an outdoor scene, that's a little bit too crazy, but if you're doing an outdoor scene, you might go and try and put some blue in the shadows here. Maybe just a tiny bit. We really don't need too much. I actually think that works well because we've got that light coming in technically through the windows there. That light is going to be from the sun. Let's say the sun's blue, and so it's going to make some blue shadows. Now, a good tip here, whenever you've got wood, is you can color correct the wood and make it not quite that crazy, but if we just go nice and low, it is quite easy to just tweak the color of wood using the mid-tone slider here. So we can make it, perhaps a little bit more, just a touch more wood-like by adding a little bit of red to it. Now, of course, that's changing a few things extra in the scene because it is just an overall mid-tones effect. We're not masking anything here that I'm not sure if I like. I might just leave that very, very low. And you'll see here on the right that the way we're able to use these shadows, midtones, and highlights effects now is all done with these color wheels. And this is a custom color wheel that I made specifically for CUPP. It's super easy to use. And I mean, I think it's so self-explanatory. You just click in the color wheel what you want to change. So for instance, if you want to bump up the highlights a little bit, there you go. I'm just going to click white, up the gain, and you're going to get brighter highlights. But of course that doesn't look good, so we're not going to do that. But you get the picture there, and if you just want to reset it, just click into black and it just works perfectly. So I think the highlights, again, let's go a little bit blue here. Let's see what looks nice. Maybe something like that. Sometimes it is good just to kind of crank up your settings a little bit so you can see what it's doing. I really like what this is doing with the kind of top light thing there. But I think we'll just go like that, and maybe I wonder if we can even decrease if that will work. Oh no, we'll stick the exposure, keep it like that. Okay, so we will also correct with a color correction light here. I've just dragged one in and we can see what that one is doing. I think that's not too bad, but of course with CUPP you can play around here quite easily with all of CUPP's different lookup textures just by clicking cycle, and we can kind of cycle through them until we get to a lookup texture that we're quite happy with. And I think this Kodak lookup texture, that looks quite nice. I like the blue that it gives the sky, and again we don't have to have that on full strength, so we can just add a little bit of it like that. We're not going to use a second light though. Okay, bloom. Let's use some bloom. So I'm going to go ahead and untick the use HDR intensity slider, and what that will do is it'll let us get like a really kind of bloomy bloom, or effectively increase the strength of the bloom. And I think this light, great example of what the bloom is doing here. So with no bloom, with bloom, CUPP's bloom effect is a very, very stacked bloom, so it just gives this beautiful kind of well, that's probably a little bit too much, but it gives a very nice, very soft look that works very, very well in HDR scenes like this. And highlight weighted threshold, we're also going to see if the bloom spread doing that. I mean, you don't often need to move the bloom spread, it already spreads out quite a lot. I think that is looking pretty good. And if you ever want to see what lights are affecting your bloom texture or what specular reflections are, you can just click that and you can see everything that is contributing to your bloom texture. And the great thing with CUPP's bloom in version 4.5.1 and above is that it has built-in full stability. You are not going to see any flickering with this bloom. And not only that, but it is a flicker-free bloom that is not based on temporal stability. It is just purely inbuilt frame-by-frame stability. So that is going to mean you're not going to have any of those ugly temporal artifacts that a temporally stabilized bloom has. Okay, look, you know what? Let's give us a little bit of a vignette. Everyone likes a bit of a vignette. Now, fringing. So what fringing does, it simulates when you've got a lens that doesn't quite collimate the blue and red and green channels perfectly, and so this often shows up in high contrasting areas. So you can just see a little bit of fringing here, just next to the light. So we're just going to leave that just kind of low. It often helps to have like a slightly more cinematic effect. Now, my favorite Petzval distortion. Look, I think I could play with Petzval and barrel distortion here all day, but we probably don't need to. I am, however, going to go ahead and enable chromatic aberrations and just going to increase this a little bit. And again, what this does, if you increase the chromatic aberration sliders so that they're both the same value, it effectively just adds a kind of chromatic blur around the edges of your frame, which you'll find is very, very common in particularly old camera lenses when they are wide open. So it ends up looking like a very cinematic effect. Of course, if you don't want the actual blur, you can just have the chromatic aberration itself by only having one of the sliders on. So we can see down the bottom here, there we've got like your standard chromatic aberration. If we go ahead and re-enable the second channel, it turns into a bit of a chromatic blur, which I personally am a fan of. Now, look, I'm not too sure how well the noise is going to come across on YouTube, but look, we can have a play around with CUPP's noise feature here. We will probably, we can increase the pixel size a little bit. Let's see, that's a little bit too big. Maybe we don't need that much noise, but look, let's put a little bit of noise here. I think think something like that looks, oh, it's probably a little bit too crazy. A little bit of noise. Look, let's pretend we're shooting this on film, eh? And a little bit of noise is going to be good. And also, I'm just going to tweak that lightness slope again, just to see where we can get to. I think that's looking a bit better. What else? Okay, so we've got dither. So CUPP's dither feature, as you can see here, it just dithers the entire scene. So that basically means that you're rendering with less total colors in your palette. Look, it looks pretty cool, but we're not going to do it for this scene. We're not going to use the dither. And ROM-B tone mapping. So we are going to use ROM-B tone mapping here. As you can see, it really does change the look of the scene. Probably going to change the gamma value, which isn't a traditional gamma, to be honest, in the ROM-B algorithm, but just a little bit. But you can see here, as soon as we click that tone mapping, we're suddenly looking a lot more like a rendered scene as opposed to a Unity kind of demo scene. So look, I'm pretty happy with how this is looking so far. Let's go ahead and have another look here and add a few other features. Now we probably don't need sharpen. I am going to add it though, just to show you guys what it actually does. So if we go ahead and add sharpen, it is going to obviously sharpen all of these items here. Look, you could definitely leave that on, and I personally am a fan. I always use depth aware sharpen. What the depth aware sharpen does is it will check what is actually a pixel that's close to what pixels are close to each other. And so if the pixels that the sharpen algorithm checks are not close to each other in the depth map, then it will not kind of increase their relative contrast. It will not sharpen them. And that's really, really helpful if you've got a scene with lots of grass in it. Then it's actually the perfect sharpen to use, because if you don't use depth aware sharpen and you have a scene with grass in it, then that grass is going to alias horribly. So speaking of aliasing, we can go ahead and, let's add some DLAA, directional localized anti-aliasing here. And as we can see, that really helps sort out this fairly ugly alias thing there as well. So yeah, and that is just a fairly standard alias line, and again with the DLAA that helps take care of it a little bit. It also helps take care of specular aliasing. That's why I love DLAA. So you'll see here just in the middle those specular highlights that really don't need to be that sharp. DLAA fixes that right up. Okay, what else should we add? Look, we're getting towards the end of this tutorial. I reckon it might be good to add a little bit of depth of field. So let's go ahead and add that. And we are going to go ahead and enable depth of field. Of course, we also need to make sure we choose the focus point. We're going to also enable front blur. And let's go ahead and maybe we'll make that table the focus point. There we go. And you can also see where your focus point is by clicking enable debug mode. And that will show you the near and far field focus planes. So the table is our focus point. Now I want to stop my aperture down. So we have a larger plane of focus. So let's stop our aperture down to about 8. Now, of course, in the real world, apertures don't stop down in floating point numbers, but we are in a game engine, so why not? Bokeh rings, that looks good. DOF focus point, we've got correct. Now, max blur, this just, it does what it says in the tin. Lets you know how much we should blur the scene. I think we are going to go kind of in the middle of this. What else? And maybe let's see how it looks if we move the focus point. Yeah, that might even look. Oh, if we move it a bit more forward, then I think you can see the effect better on YouTube as well. So we're just focusing on this kind of initial thing, and if we could even decrease the aperture a little bit now as well, and it still looks pretty good. So yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. Now, I actually haven't tested if sun shafts will work in this scene. Let's go ahead and just really quickly enable them and see, yeah, we can get a few kind of sun shafts in the back there. So the sun's obviously coming in from the left there, but look, why not? And we'll make them a little bit blue because, again, remember our lights, we made a touch blue, so there we go. And the sun shafts, of course, also contribute to Prism's bloom texture because they render before the bloom. Because, of course, sun shafts are in the physical world and bloom happens in lens and in camera. Okay, so look, I think that is just about it. We're not going to add any other effects, but if we go ahead and maybe add in a maybe a mouse look script, let's see if we can do that. Hey, yeah. Let's see if that works. We can go ahead and hit play. Of course, we are rendering all of this in 4K as well. There we go. Okay, my mouse script does work. And so here we go. We have the scene rendering in 4K. And we can, of course, zoom around. Well, the mouse script's a bit wonky, but look, you get the picture. This is our new scene, and I think that is looking pretty good, particularly from where we started. So if we go ahead and hit the pause button there, let's go ahead and turn off the volume to see what it would have looked like without CUPP. Ooh, and that is, yep, that definitely looks like a standard URP scene. That is not particularly impressive, even though the lights are baked as well. So this, guys, is why you need post-processing like cinematic URP post-processing. Go ahead, pick it up on the asset store today. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.